watching Property TV.
Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and this is a show where you can have your property related questions answered by our team of experts. And joining me today is Sally Wang, International Property Expert and author. Welcome, Sally.
Thank you, Stephen.
Nice to have you over here. Not too far from Greenwich, so...
No, not really. Yeah, very close to my office as well with the Crossrail, the Elizabeth opening. Yeah.
We try to please. Try to make it easy for you.
Yeah, you're very good.
And Ryan Hughes, property investor and buy-to-let specialist, all the way from Manchester. Well, thank you for coming all this way to join us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, this is, I think, your second show, so you did very well on the first one, so great to have you back.
Thank you.
Okay. Sally, your first question. I don't know what the answer to this one is. Is there an optimum time to keep a buy-to-let investment? I'm thinking that refurbishment costs and other renovations will come into play at some point and would be pleased to have the panel's thoughts on this.
Mm-hmm. Right, this question is a very good question. We don't actually have an exact figure for the audience because everybody is different. I think you need to look at this based on your personal individual circumstances. So, but then the bottom line, I think the logic behind it is if you don't consider other factors, you want to sell it at a high point. You want to make money when you sell because you need to factor in the purchase price, the purchase cost. When you sell, you have a solicitor fee, you have the agent fee as well. So you want to make money. So when is the good time to sell? This depends on the market. So I can't really give you an idea of how many years you want to keep it. It really depends on the market. In our company, because we have a resale department, so what happens is when the buyer hold on the property for about 7-8 years, let's say because it's a long-term investment, buy-to-let investment, 7-8 years, they will start the conversation with us. Then we'll be like, okay, no problem, we keep an eye out for you on the market. And then we will regularly update our vendor, the seller, maybe once every 3 months, just to say, okay, now your property worth about this amount in this current market. 3 months later, we tell them, okay, now it's a summertime, this is what the property will possibly be worth. And then you make a decision on whether you want to sell at this point. But this is for people who are not in a hurry to sell. They want to sell at the highest point so the market make the most money. So we advise them. But the other group of people, short group of people, they want a quick sell. Then it's a different scenario. If they want a quick sell, then we need to, okay, we have a very short period of a time window. They need to close the deal at this time. For example, recently we have a client. He wants a quick sell. And then what we did is, okay, we do a valuation, we put on the market, and then we use all our resources. And then we get him a quick offer. And then we need to play with how do we get a better offer based on a short period of time. Then do you organize an open day? You have a bid, you get a price. So we actually got him a higher than asking price, but that was a quick sell. Obviously, if he sell next year or maybe 2 years later when the market is even better, he makes more money. But for people who want a quick sell, then for them, you know, it's hard to say how long you hold on to the property for. Yeah.
But bringing that back to sort of refurbishment and replacement of furniture, that sort of thing. I mean, would you expect? I mean, you usually would put into a rental property sort of medium level sort of furniture.
Yeah.
Quality but robust furniture so that it does have some life.
Yeah.
Would you expect to have to replace that and redecorate after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or where would you see the refurbishment costs coming in?
Okay, right. So when you have a good letting and management property, they should, like, we always advise our clients, okay, when we do the property inspection every year, and maybe once or at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. For some properties, we give them special care, maybe 4 times a year. So when we do the property inspection, we need to go in and see whether there's a small problems happen, and then we repair at that point. That time probably only costs you about £100 But you leave it for 5 years, that will probably cost you £2,000. So you want to, start early, spot the problems and repair it. And then when the tenancy move out, the checkout is very important as well. You need to make sure the place is in good condition. Otherwise, you charge the tenant. And then you bring the property back to the best possible condition as you can bring back to. Then that will reduce your cost as a landlord. And then 5 years down the line, for example, answer Stephen, your question, a lot of our properties, if it is well managed, you don't need to spend money after 5 years to do a big repairment. You don't need to. You probably just need a bit of fresh up the property. But then the tenant might have done that for you. That's why you save that cost. So back to the example I give you, the quick sale. We managed the property for about 5 years. We done nothing. All I did is I spent about £3, get a bottle of the bleach to clean the toilet. Because when I went in the toilet, one of the toilets is still. So I cleaned that. I spent £3, bought a candle. I light the candle, put in the apartment, 3-bedroom with a massive terrace. So when the buyer comes in, I didn't bill the landlord. But if I bill the landlord, £6. That's all you spend, because the property has been well looked after during the tenancy terms.
I think there's a good message there, isn't there? Get a good managing agent.
Yes.
Anything to add to that, Ryan?
I think it's always worth getting a valuation on your tenancy renewal. So especially with buy-to-let, if your rental's increasing, it's one thing that always pushes the value of the property. And I recommend it to all landlords, assess the rental each year. At the same time, if you've got a good letting agent, or most local letting agents will give you a free valuation, it's worth it. Covering nationwide, there's different variations and there may be hotspots and it may be a good time to sell. A yearly valuation is always worth doing at the time of tenancy extending. At the same time, there may be a news alert and a new company is moving into that area. All of a sudden it goes hot. Now's the time to sell because you've been looking at the right time to sell. Now there's huge eyes on that specific area. That's your time to exit the investment. With regards to the refurbishment side, a good letting agent or yourself, quarterly or 6-month inspections is key, and a pay-as-you-go theme is the best way in my opinion, because what you don't want to do is the tenant moves out and the deposit just covers the rental and doesn't have enough for any of the refurbishment works.
I did like your point. If you deal with problems at the point that you first spot them, it's the cheapest way, isn't it? Okay, great stuff. Thank you, Sally. Ryan, do the panel think it better to furnish buy-to-let properties or perhaps wait until prospective tenants gives their preference? I suppose it's a marketing question really, isn't it?
Yeah, I've always found that furnished properties let out a lot quicker, which is what most people want in this day and age where a lot of the tenants are bringing a suitcase, hanging the clothes up and they're moved in. As long as there's a good inventory done when they move in, I would always recommend putting a furniture pack in. Alternatively, if it is a house buy-to-let, some people more family orientated, children, sometimes that's where the question may be asked.
People will tend to stay in a house longer than they would a flat, I think, in general. So.
In London, not really. Not really, yeah, because in London, in central London, sometimes because their work, they need to build up their career, they need to be convenient to travel, and then they need to save money, and they could live in an apartment for years and years. Houses, it depends as well, because some of the family, they live in a house, they like the neighbor, they like the school, and then they live for a couple of years, they thought, okay, that's expensive, well, I can buy a house myself as well. I think it's down to the affordability. This is what one of the factors.
Affordability would be key. I think it's great to have the option. As a landlord, you're looking, going, do I furnish it, do I not? From a marketing point of view, you're going to let it quicker because it looks nice. So everyone wants to buy, everyone wants to live in the showroom. That's why they exist.
And also, I believe you do that as well, because when we do the marketing, we can do like this place can come as furnished, then can come out as unfurnished. So when we help our landlords, what we do is quite clever, right? So because upon the completion, the moment we can get the key, we can take pictures, we list it. But we list it as furnished and unfurnished. But at that point, we order the furniture, but it takes a while for the furniture to arrive. Then we place an order to buy the furniture, but let's see, 1 day later, we got an offer unfurnished. And then before the furniture get delivered, you can still cancel it. So we give the landlords a flexibility. But as you said, most of the properties rent out easy with furnished.
I think the other point is you could take a lesson from new developments. You know, the show flat always sells, doesn't it? Because people have got sometimes very little imagination. They can't visualize what a place is going to look like.
Or they don't have the time.
A lot of apartments that you see are your white walls. You know, they may have a balcony, they may have a different room, but dressing and furnishing a property in a block that may have 50 to 100 units identical, but just being on a different floor or further down the hallway, you've always got to set yours apart. And I believe that's where different furniture, you have your low range, your medium, your high. That's down to the landlord to make the decision. A lot of them will offer a brochure where you can say, right, this is what I want. And I do believe a higher furniture pack does entice a better quality tenant and demand a higher rent. I do believe you can see the difference.
Okay. I can remember when I first came to London, I was introduced to quite a well-known surveyor who was in the West End, and I said, what advice have you got for anybody that would, you know, be buying property down here? And he said, and he pointed to a great big tower block where it was just, you know, window, 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 window. And he said, buy something that you can identify. He said, otherwise, he says, why is that one going to be any different in price to that one?
Exactly.
And it was good advice, actually. Very simplistic, but very good advice.
Common sense, good common sense,
And I think, again, it comes back to this thing that we've talked about in other shows where, you know, if you're a good landlord, if you do the right things, you're going to get better tenants, aren't you? And a better return on your capital. Okay, well, there we are. That's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So join me again after break, where Ryan and Sally will be back to answer more of your questions.
You are watching Property TV. You are watching Property TV.
Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and I'm joined today by Sally Wang and Ryan Hughes. So, right guys, let's have our second questions. Sally, I have a tenant who is constantly running in and out of arrears. My agent suggests that I should immediately instigate possession proceedings, but this seems to me to be terribly harsh. What would the panel suggest be the reasonable and appropriate stance to take?
It's actually really nice for this audience to feel, you know, this act could be quite harsh. I think I agree with the point they just raised in previous episode. The relationship is the key, the landlord and the tenants. So what I would advise, it's up to you to take it or not. What I would advise is have a conversation with the tenant first. I mean, you can have the conversation yourself if you manage the property yourself, or ask your letting and management agent to do the conversation. Find out why the tenant is struggling. If it is covert or if it is suddenly, you know, kind of uncontrollable reason, they lost the job, but it is only temporary, see whether you can find a solution with the tenant. I believe if you kind of heart to heart and be reasonable with that person, if that person is quite genuine, I trust you do the credit check beforehand, you do met the tenants, you know they are good quality tenants at the beginning, then there may be a way to resolve this. Maybe they pay, I don't know, half the beginning of the month, half towards the end of the month for 2 or 3 months until he's back onto his feet, and he can, you know, he actually will thank you as a landlord, and then you probably get yourself a very good long-term loyal tenant there. So this, I would advise, have the conversation professionally, politely, and heart to heart. Find out whether you can solve this way. If this doesn't work, let's say tenant doesn't respond to your request, and then you have 2 options, I think. One of them is that if the tenant hasn't paid rent for about to 1 month. For let's say if the tenant hasn't paid the rent, they owe you 2 months rent, then I believe you can serve Section 8. But Section 8, I think, is based on a lot of criteria. So down to that is a very long process going to the court, and the judge will have a big say in this. The other option is Section 21. Section 21 is that if the tenant owes you for one month and day, then you probably, if the tenant, during the tenancy agreement, he's constantly or have a multiple time of a breach of the tenancy agreement, then you can look at this option. This option, I think, is because it's not aimed at focus on, landlord want to kick the tenants out or the tenants want to, breach the tenancy agreement. So you probably have a better chance and less complications in serving this. So my advice, sorry.
I was going to say, do you think the attitude between tenants, letting agents and landlords has changed since COVID?
I believe in general market it must have changed because I naively think that it should be like this from the very beginning. The landlord, the agents, and the tenants, from the very beginning, it should be on a friendly term. This is what I naively believe this is ideal situation. I know a lot of agents, us included, and I believe a lot of agents, a lot of people like you, a lot of nice agents, they probably already done this, maintain a fantastic relationship between the landlord and between the tenants. But of course, there are some people, they are not, they're very harsh, they are very rigid, they just take it as a cold business, it's all pure money business. And those, I believe, some of them probably will change during COVID because they realize this is not going to work.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think when you referred to getting your agent to talk to people before, it suddenly occurred to me that I'm not going to say a lot of letting agents, but certainly a number tend to treat the business as a pure number exercise.
Yeah, that's right.
They forget that they're dealing with people's
it's a people
homes.
business. Yes,
it's a home.
People and we all been there. We all been tenants. We all been the homeowners. We all been landlords. You're dealing with people, and it's a people business. If you want a business to go easy, you need to understand the people needs. You need to have a great communication skills. You need to look at their problems and trying to find solutions to the problems, maintain the harmony. So during COVID, less than 1% of the property we manage encounter the problem that you mentioned, because we believe from the very beginning, the relationship is the key. You manage the relationship properly, you can avoid yourself a lot of problems.
That's a very caring and understanding answer, Sally.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, Ryan, your second question. I'm a fairly new buy-to-let investor, and I'm wondering if and when I decide to expand my portfolio, I should self-manage or employ a professional managing agent. Apart from the obvious increase in costs, what are the pros and cons? I think you talk all day on that, couldn't you?
It's a big topic. The biggest one is the middle person, the 24-hour call out. Otherwise, it's coming to you and you are responsible. That is the number one for me, having a letting agent. That's why you give them a slice of the pie, in my opinion. Otherwise, water, electrics, gas, you are the point of contact. And that in itself is, depending on where you're based and depending on how big the portfolio is, if this is a full-time job, then you should potentially be managing it yourself. If this is, you have a 9 to 5 or you have your own separate business, you really need to be focused on that. And tenants, they need that person to call, and they don't care if it's 9 o'clock at night, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they are that place to go to. And if you don't, there could be an emergency that's not dealt with, and it's your property. It's going to affect. So if there's a leak or it puts the tenants at danger, you're liable for it. So I believe it's down to the size of your portfolio. What your portfolio is as well, I believe, is a key one. Whether it's student, residential, a HMO, HMOs can be a big handful. Some of the 7, 8 beds that you can deal with, there's a lot going on. And if you're not doing it full time, you can't focus your attention on your day-to-day job.
I think one of the words you used there was liability.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's a very important factor today. And I think a lot of the smaller landlords are not always aware that they're actually legally liable for a lot of these things. And if somebody was to endure a catastrophe because of your inactivity or inappropriate advice or guidance, I mean, it really can come down on you pretty heavily, can't it?
It's the liability side, and also it could potentially affect the rent, which is why we do it in the first place. If you don't resolve these issues, or the hot water's not on, or the heating's not on, there is certain clauses where you won't have to pay the full amount of rent. If you're coming into that, and sometimes people will be very close, mortgage may be 400, rent's 500, that fine margin may be gone. The liability is definitely the biggest one. Section 8, Section 21s, the legal side, especially for newer or smaller landlords, it's guidance.
Yeah, and also, you know, the other liabilities like legal responsibility, for example, the EICR, the gas safety certificate,
Yeah.
all of them need to be in place. Otherwise, as you said, if something really, really bad happened to the tenant, it can come down to the landlord really heavily. Not only just money, it's legal responsibility. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you both for those answers. All very comprehensive and very professional, both of you. Thank you both very much for that. I think I'd like to just end the show by just asking each of you to spend a minute on what you think the state of the market is and where we're going for the rest of the year. Sally?
That's definitely not a 1 minute question.
Well, there's your challenge.
That's my challenge. I am very confident. Myself is a very upbeat and positive person. I believe the UK market is always there. It's active, it's fluid. So it depends on what you want to achieve from this market, whether you want to buy, whether you want to sell, whether you want to let and manage. You can always find a best time to do any one of these activities. We are extremely busy at the moment. So I'm positive for the rest of the year. What about you, Ryan?
I think it's no secret that the lack of stock or the confidence that people are selling the home is there. Personally, I think if the conveyancing can move a bit quicker, people have the confidence. One thing that we've seen shoot up last year and this year was the fall through rate, and I think that's sort of given people a knock of confidence there. If that conveyancing can get back to where it was pre-COVID time, and I don't think the work from home situation has helped many people with regards to legal documents working from home and not being able to take them documents out of the office, or local authorities working from home and not being able to provide that information. We've seen averages go from 12 weeks to now 26 weeks. That's huge. And for people to sort of move on, that lack of stock, if that keeps happening, people, there's less to go at. But at the same time, we're very busy and the prices that are being achieved are fantastic.
I know here in Canary Wharf in particular, a lot of the buildings, because of the Grenfell disaster, have been subject to examinations over safety, and they haven't had these is it ESW1 certificates. That's now being resolved sort of building by building slowly. So we're actually getting saleable product back on the market now. But there's certainly been a huge void of stuff to sell here.
Good stuff. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, if they get onto the market, you will sell very quickly. Yeah.
Okay, well, on that happy note and your positivity, I'm going to thank you both very much indeed for coming in. So Sally Wang, thank you. Ryan Hughes, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And for me, Stephen Galpin, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Property Question Time.